So what's up people, and welcome to another One Piece discussion video. So for today's video, I would like to cover the Busoshoku Haki, also known as the Armament Haki. And more specifically, I would like to talk about the advanced form of Armament Haki that we've been seeing more and more of in the series. Now up to this point, we've seen characters such as Silverali and Sentomaru use this technique. And it's the technique where you could strike an opponent without actually touching them. And it's a technique that Luffy, although he's become much more skilled at Armament Haki, has so far not been able to master. Now why I want to talk about this technique is most recently we've seen Old Man Hyo actually use this technique as well. And what was curious is what he told Luffy when he gave that demonstration, where he said that this is a technique that is quite well known to the master samurai of Wano, and it is a technique that's typically used to enforce their blades. And by doing so, a skilled samurai can actually cut the most difficult of barriers, but at the same time avoid cutting anything that they don't want to cut, even as delicate as paper. And of course, this was the exact same lesson that Roronoa Zoro's instructor, Master Koshiro, taught him. And it was that teaching that of course gave Zoro the ability to defeat Mr. One back in the Alabaster arc. Now back then, since Master Koshiro mentioned things like harmony and synchronization to your surroundings, I always thought that this was mostly Kenbunshoku Haki sort of technique or observation Haki technique. However, after seeing what Master Hyo said, or Old Man Hyo said, it almost feels like this is just as much an Armament Haki or Busoshoku Haki sort of technique. And so what I wanted to discuss is some interesting revelations that have come from the recent chapters with regards to this technique. Now, again, this is a discussion. I don't really know any more about things, and I just wanted to open this up for discussion so that I could hear what all you feel about this technique. Because as much as there has been a lot of revelation, I'm still in the dark with regards to a lot of things. And so I just wanted to ask a lot of you readers what you felt about this. Now, in my opinion, I feel that this recent explanation helps clarify a lot of things. And for example, with regards to Master Koshido's explanation, I always felt that it was lacking in some ways, in the sense that as much as observation Haki can help synchronize you with the environment so that it prevents you from hitting things that you don't want to hit with your sword, it still was a difficulty in explaining why you could cut steel just with synchronization. Originally, I tried to explain it away by saying, well, if you're synchronized with the enemy's armor, then maybe you can harmonize your blade with their armor and somehow pierce through, between the atoms of the armor or something like that, and somehow cut steel. It was a very difficult explanation to give, But now, if it turns out that it's actually Busoshoku Haki or Armament Haki that you're putting into the blade to enhance and strengthen the blade, then that makes perfect sense why you could actually cut steel. And so if this is the case, what Master Koshido was telling Zoro was that a master swordsman not only was highly skilled in their sword technique, but they were a master of both Kenbunshoku Haki and Busoshoku Haki. And this makes perfect sense now, because that gives you an idea of why people like Hawkeye Mihawk and Red Hair Shanks are just so powerful, even compared to some of the outrageous devil fruit power users that are in this world, because they are probably extremely skilled at both Kenbunshoku Haki and Busoshoku Haki. And now, if Old Man Hyo told Luffy that the method for being able to strike somebody without touching them is very similar to using your Armament Haki to reinforce your weapons, then my feeling is that the striking without touching is a form of Armament Haki projection. Because of course you would have to project your Haki outside beyond your body to be able to reinforce your weapons. And instead of reinforcement power, if you used it as a striking power, then maybe you could project your Haki outward and use the Haki to strike your opponent. At least that is my feeling. And I just wanted to hear if everybody else felt that way. And of course, Haki projection would be very much in line with a lot of the other comics and stories out there that use spiritual powers to reinforce their fighting skills. You know, a good example is Hunter x Hunter, where they use Nen projection to be able to strike beyond their bodily attacks. It is of course the whole basis for the Kamehameha wave in Dragon Ball Z. Of course, in Star Wars, the Force Push would be another good example of this. And of course, this implies that Sentomaru, as young as he is a very advanced Haki user because he's one of the few people who could use this advanced Busoshoku no Haki, which he calls Ashigara Dokkoi. Now, why I mentioned that this would explain a lot of things is that if Oda wanted to, I would feel that he could use this explanation to explain a lot of things that happened in past chapters that were very interesting but a little bit hard to explain. So for example, if you can project your Haki into your weapon, the question I would like to ask is then can you project your Haki beyond the weapon? And if the Haki took the form of whatever medium that it was projected out from, then can the Haki be used like an extended version of a blade? And why I say this would explain a lot of past things in the chapters is this would explain some of the superhuman feats that some of these really skilled swordsmen have been able to do. So for example, how can Hawkeye Mihawk or Roronoa Zoro be able to slice through an entire warship with just their sword? Yes, their sword is extremely sharp, but still, that can't explain for being able to cut well beyond the limits of where the sword reaches, right? So if the Haki can be extended outward so that it basically takes the form of a sword but goes well beyond the distance of a sword, then maybe for a short period they could extend that sword out and slice a much larger entity. And this will definitely explain Zoro's outrageous attack he did to take out that giant mountain of a man called Pika in the Dressrosa arc. In this case, I know that so far Zoro has not officially learned this advanced form of Armament Haki, but for all we know, maybe Zoro just subconsciously can do this just the way Luffy was for a while subconsciously using Conqueror's Haki. At least this would explain exactly why somebody as skilled as Zoro can slice a mountain in half, right? I mean, sure, you could always say his sword skill is so strong that he was able to, slice way further than the sword, but if they use this explanation, then there is no debate anymore. You could easily understand why Zoro was able to slice somebody as large as Pika during the Dressrosa arc. And in fact, if you can become really strong, maybe you could even see that attack. And that is what Hawkeye Mihawk used to attack Whitebeard during the Marineford arc, right? I mean, at that point, you could see this energy wave shooting out from his sword. And of course, once again, you could say, well, this is just his aura. But if you think about it, his aura and his Haki are just similar forms. It's just that you're talking about two different descriptions of the same thing, right? I mean, if you go to something like Ruby, yes, what they talk about in Aura is what they call Haki in One Piece. So if a lot of these explanations in other comics are given that it's their spiritual attack, it's their mantra, it's their nen, it's their aura, then of course in One Piece it will make sense that it will be their haki. And of course this would also help explain some of the things that we saw the other member of the Monster 3, Sanji, do in some of the past chapters. The most recent that we've seen is when he used Diable Jambe in the Fishman Island arc. During that time, he used Geppo to be able to run up into the sky, and then from a really far distance, he was able to pick each person off, kicking them and slamming them down into the ground, from a very far distance. Now, of course, if this was Luffy, this will be easily explained because he is a rubber person, but in Sanji's case, you can't really explain away why he can strike people from really far distances. But now, if he was using a form of advanced armament haki, again subconsciously, in addition to his Diable Jambe, then maybe this would explain why he was able to attack so many of the fishmen from so high in the air. And in fact, this may even help explain the skywalk or the moonwalk or the Geppo, as they call it in One Piece, where they're walking in the sky. It's this technique that CP9 uses, but how do they use this, right? And how is Sanji able to use this? Well, maybe it's another form of haki push, a haki attack, but you're now pushing into the environment to propel yourself into the air. And if you do it that way, then at least that makes some sense as to why Sanji can actually run around in the sky. Now, of course, all of this is speculation, but considering the fact that Oda has brought this up, if he wanted to, he could explain a lot of the things that didn't make a lot of sense in the past, although we all accepted it as such. And in fact, if there were other warriors out there who could take this projection haki even further than what was seen so far, then you could somehow explain some of these other things in the story. Why is, for example, red-haired Shanks' pirate crew so feared amongst the other people in this world, right? I mean, even though he is a Yonko, he always looked like he is kind of the most reserved out of all the Yonko. I mean, Kaido is a beast. Everybody can see Kaido is a beast, right? Big Mom is huge. She's a giant. And of course, so was Whitebeard. And then you have Shanks, who's actually not really tall even for a normal person, and yet people fear Shanks a lot more than some of these other Yonko. And so why is this the case, right? Why is it that when some of the worst generation, the new generation, attacked Shanks, Shanks was able to, defeat them relatively easily, and from what we hear now, he's the one that took out Kid's arm, right? So how is he so powerful? How is his crew so powerful when we haven't seen them as a devil fruit user at all from any of them? And so maybe they are extremely advanced haki users, and because of that, they have powers that are far beyond what we have seen so far from normal fighters. And for example, we've all seen that advanced haki users can actually power up their ranged weapons by putting haki into their projectiles, right? We saw that with Marguerite in Amazon Lily when she powered up her arrows and used them as explosive arrows. But what if you can actually power up not just your projectile, but also your weapon itself? So for example, if you recall way back, there was a time when Van Augur was shooting seagulls. and he was able to shoot seagulls from way far away. Now, one thing is that although Haki imbued projectiles can give greater damage, there is nothing that indicates that you could send them further distance. However, I'm wondering if you can, power up your weapon, then maybe it could be used to project that projectile a much farther distance. And maybe that's what Van Augur did to be able to shoot those seagulls from way far away. So he used observation haki to be able to aim at those seagulls, and then used this advanced form of armament haki on his rifle to be able to snipe those seagulls from way far away. And for example, if Van Augur was good at being able to power his weapon using haki, but he wasn't really good at being able to power his projectiles, then that would still explain why he wasn't able to shoot at Ace in his Logia form, because he wasn't able to use haki bullets that would be able to penetrate him. Now, once again, this is all speculation, and I just wanted to bring it up in this video to hear your opinions and how you feel with regards to this. Now, considering the fact that this sort of aura projection or haki projection or nem projection has been seen in a lot of other forms of entertainment, everything from Star Wars all the way up to Hunter x Hunter, then it would make sense that eventually Oda would be bringing this capability up in One Piece as well. And on a final note, one thing I can't figure out about the Straw Hat Pirates in general, and Luffy in particular, is considering that Armament Haki and Observation Haki can be taught to other people, unlike the Conqueror's Haki, which you have to basically have, gifted to you. Why doesn't Luffy teach it to the other members of the crew? Now, I know for the Monster 3 with Sanji and Zoro, he doesn't have to do that because they learn everything on their own. However, for even the weak 3, for example, Nami, Chopper, and Usopp, it would be a lot better than trying to protect them, is to try to teach them the abilities of both Busoshoku no Haki and Kenbunshoku no Haki. Now, luckily for Usopp's case, he was able to learn Kenbunshoku no Haki on his own, and he was able to save Luffy and Trafalgar Law from Sugar's attack. However, if, for example, the advanced form of Haki can eventually be taught to other people, and if it can be used to power not only projectiles but also weapons so that the projectiles will shoot further, then maybe Usopp wouldn't need that 2-stage projectile to be able to shoot and snipe long distances as he needed to attack Sugar. And I would think that that would be a tremendous power-up for somebody like Usopp. Now, maybe Oda is holding back because if he did that, then somebody like Robin would become seriously OP, because she would be able to use her Kenbunshoku no Haki to grow limbs way far away and then use Armament Haki to attack anybody with those limbs. However, it just doesn't make sense that if you can teach both Kenbunshoku no Haki and Busoshoku no Haki to other people, why wouldn't Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji teach it to people like Nami, Chopper, and Usopp? And I would definitely like to see Nami and Usopp in other forms of action besides what they do, right? Nami always does her weather attack and Usopp does his sniping. But supposedly, Usopp's supposed to be as strong as pre-time skip Zoro now, and yet he's still running away as a coward a lot of times. Sure, he's fighting a lot more powerful foes now, but it would be nice whenever they're being attacked by fodder that you see Usopp use something besides sniping to take these people down, because yeah, he's supposed to be pretty strong in hand-to-hand now. And of course, Nami is much stronger in hand-to-hand according to her fight against Cracker. She didn't get defeated that easily against Cracker. I know Cracker was just toying with her and eventually Cracker took her out relatively easily. But if it was compared to a standard, Marine foot soldier, I think Nami did a better job than a typical soldier would. So I think Nami is much stronger in hand-to-hand combat as well. And yet she still only uses her weather attacks. So it would be nice if, Luffy would teach them Kenbunshoku no Haki and Busoshoku no Haki so that they could take care of themselves and Luffy wouldn't have to worry about them so much all the time. Anyway, that's about it for this One Piece video. But I thought the recent revelation with regards to the advanced form of Armament Haki was very interesting, and so I wanted to make this video as a discussion point for other people. And as always, please post your comments in the comment section below, and thank you very much for anybody who's willing to give their opinions with regards to this. And in any case, I'll continue to make more One Piece videos in the future. I hope you join me at that time. And until then, happy adventuring, happy pirating, and as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.